the last thing you want after organizing people by giving them literature and showing them the ways of Egypt. The last thing you want after announcing your name to the world and having every kingdom next to yours look at it like a prize is to have a pharaoh who is childless, at least for sons. But this is exactly what happened. Amenemhat IV would rule for only 9 years, and then he would just die. Things got so desperate that they actually had to get a woman, his sister, to take over. This woman would inherit an empire that was once very, very stable, but with this announcement of a king dying and the situation getting this desperate, this would help strengthen the enemies of Egypt and make them realize that they have an opportunity which they cannot refuse. Now, this was the final straw for the 12th dynasty. First of all, a lot of things were starting to happen at the same time. Yet again, Indo Europeans have started bringing horses and carts to Asian areas, which is starting to become a big problem because they're raiding different civilizations, some of them connected to Egypt in Asia. Even as far as Greece, the horses have now started to make their way in. Places like the Minoans and stuff like that would have known about things that are this big because both Indo Europeans and Egyptians affected them. As far south, we even start to see other movements coming in. So this woman pharaoh is inheriting a problem which might be too big for her to handle. But without worry, she continues the rule of Pharaoh. And of course, her reign is very, very different again, because unlike the rest of the pharaohs, female pharaohs, who try to cosplay as men, she remains fully female, she remains in charge, and she basically is the final tick of a dynasty. This is odd, but it's great in the sense that at least Egypt had a backup plan. When Amenemhat I died, if you can remember, the backup plan was the son. And so it's not odd for a quick succession, but to have no male ready, this tells you about the state of Egypt at this time. Now, to put this into context, Senusret I ruled for 41 years. His father ruled for 29 years. His son ruled for 35 years. And on average, the rulers ruled for 29 to 40 years. So for a pharaoh to die in 9 years, it really was a shock. But like I said, they had backup. This female pharaoh, she would rule for a long time. She would take over. She would lead Egypt into one of the greatest times ever. Except she didn't even live half the time that their previous pharaoh lived. Within 4 years of her reign, she died. The 12th dynasty that had been strong and seen its peak right before these two pharaohs had just crumbled out of nowhere, and this led to another intermediate period. It's not that they were both without achievements, it's that it wouldn't matter because now Egypt becomes lost again. Loads of foreigners start to gear up for war. We start to see the Hyksos coming in with chariots. When we see Egypt again thriving, we will see the influence of the Hyksos very deeply with horses, chariots, and all kinds of things. Their influence was so deep that you start seeing horses and chariots as far as Nigeria and North Africa, as far as Libya and Morocco, places that would be virtually out of the reach of Asiatics because of Egypt's border, where they would just stop them from there outside of just trade. The real difference between this woman and Hatshepsut is that Hatshepsut ruled for real. She merely was in place as a standby, as a final question mark, or a final full stop to the 12th dynasty. A female pharaoh was a break from tradition, but with her death, break from tradition would not stop. For instance, in only 154 years in the 13th dynasty, you see a series of rulers that could be 10 or 70, depending on who you believe. But if we go with the lesser number, we start to see that on average the rulers rule for about 4 years. Speculation is that they kept getting chosen and they keep moving from pharaoh to pharaoh. This shows a huge break from tradition. Either they keep getting removed or they keep dying. Highly unlikely that they just keep dying over and over, especially since the years seem to be about 4. Egypt loses a piece to the Hyksos. Strongholds in Nubia are given back. The fortress that was once strong is broken into by the Nubians. Something went wrong when the pharaoh died. But something we must consider is that this reign had troubles all the way from the beginning with the assassination of Amenemhet I. And to have such a tragic end at the end makes all the sense. Maybe they just didn't have as much control as they thought they did.